when you have a situation that you have in Cleveland where you traded your veteran quarterback, now you're forced to be in this situation where you have to be patient. Once again, have grace with growth. And Coach Stefanski knows that the worst thing that you could do is alter a person's confidence by putting that person on a short leash. Okay. What he's trying to do is give all grace to say, hey, this is your team. This is your job to lose, right? But here's my question to Coach Stefanski. How long are you willing to wait? Because if we keep losing games, what are we really doing? Because for sake of conversation, it ain't like Shadur Sanders or Bailey Zappi can do any worse. Y'all still losing.
Sooner or later,
they're going to have to really realize, like, hold on, dog.
We just got to see what we got in the locker room.
And then this is another thing.
Dan Orlovsky suddenly found himself standing in the middle of a full-blown media storm, and this time there was nowhere to hide. After publicly defending Kevin Stefanski and his coaching decisions with the Cleveland Browns, Orlovsky became the target of intense criticism from former NFL MVP Cam Newton, and the backlash came fast and loud. What started as a routine sports debate instantly turned into one of the most heated exchanges we've seen in recent memory. Orlovsky tried to frame Stefanski as a misunderstood coach, arguing that he's still highly respected around the league and would land another head coaching job sooner rather than later. But Cam Newton wasn't buying any of it, not for a second. Newton didn't ease into his response or soften his words. He came out swinging with facts, context, and pure frustration that many fans have been voicing for years.
For you to make the right decision, all the decisions has not been conducive to what we need to do. 13 different quarterbacks. I don't care what the name on the back of their jersey says. That has to be said to something. When you have guys in this league.
Did you want to? Well, he's developed young players, maybe not young quarterback. Which young quarterback did you want him to develop?
The ones that's on your roster. The ones that you went out and drafted. The ones that you have to go out and win with or put your team in the position to win. We're talking Dylan Gabriel. We're talking Shadur Sanders. Those are.
According to Newton, Kevin Stefanski went through an unbelievable 13 different quarterbacks during his tenure with the Cleveland Browns and somehow still failed to develop even one into a reliable long-term answer. That number alone stopped the conversation cold. 13 quarterbacks isn't bad luck. 13 quarterbacks is a flashing warning sign that something is fundamentally broken. Newton made it clear that you don't get that many chances at the most important position in sports and walk away with empty hands unless there's a serious leadership problem. Newton also challenged the idea that Stefanski's resume deserved praise. He pointed out that the one moment people keep clinging to, a playoff appearance back in 2019, doesn't hold up under real scrutiny anymore. That roster was loaded with talent, and even then, the success wasn't sustained. One postseason run does not erase years of instability, confusion, and wasted development. And this is where Newton drew a hard line on accountability.
Shadur Sanders, those are obvious names. When you hire a guy like Kevin Stefanski, first and foremost, he's an offensive mind.
Yep.
The offense for the Cleveland Browns were in the bottom half of the wrong position or in the wrong.
While Orlovsky attempted to deflect blame onto the quarterbacks themselves, suggesting poor play forced constant changes, Newton shut that narrative down immediately. He emphasized that developing quarterbacks is not optional. It's the job description of an NFL head coach. According to Newton, when you cycle through quarterback after quarterback without elevating a single one, the issue stops being about talent. The issue becomes the system, the coaching philosophy, and the inability to put players in positions to succeed. Stefanski didn't just miss once or twice, he missed 13 times. Newton didn't hesitate to say it out loud. He declared that Stefanski's firing wasn't harsh, wasn't premature, and wasn't unfair. In his eyes, it was overdue, because at some point, excuses run out, and results are the only thing that matters in this league.
My dear friend Cam Newton about 7 minutes ago said, well, Dak Prescott is doing more and more reason why the offense and the Cowboys as a team are playing that way because of his performance other than Jalen Hurts. Cam, how many touchdowns Dak got this year? 22. How many turnovers does he have?
A lot. Yeah.
7. Mm-hmm. How many touchdowns Jalen Hurts have this year?
Are we talking pass?
22.
Are we talking pass and run?
Touchdowns.
Yeah, 22.
22.
22 total.
How many turnovers Jalen Hurts have?
Two total. Two total.
So you mean to tell me
Two total.
that a quarterback?
Hold on, Dan.
That a quarterback?
Hold on. Wait, let me throw the ball up as you dunk it. Let me throw it up as you dunk it. You ready?
Don't forget Cam, that a quarterback is doing more for a team and statistically is not having equal performance.
What made Newton's critique hit even harder was when he brought up how Stefanski handled Shadur Sanders this season. That situation, more than anything else, exposed the cracks in Stefanski's approach to quarterback development and game management. Shadur Sanders entered the league as one of the most gifted young quarterbacks in recent memory. High football IQ, natural leadership, and the ability to rise in pressure moments. Yet instead of building around those strengths, the Browns buried him in inconsistency, poor protection, and questionable decision-making. Newton made it clear that this wasn't just a missed opportunity. It was a pattern repeating itself again. A talented quarterback walks in with promise, confidence, and upside, only to leave damaged, doubted, or stalled out. That's not coincidence. That's culture. And that's why Cam Newton's response resonated so strongly across the league and with fans. This wasn't personal. This was about standards, about what it actually means to lead an NFL locker room and develop talent instead of burning through it. In Newton's eyes, the verdict was already in. When quarterbacks keep failing under the same coach, the coach is the common denominator.
Suddenly you throw him into the start lineup, and he hasn't had any reps with the first team at all. Think about that. So you're just going to throw him to the wolves like that, huh?
And no amount of media spin can change that. However, Kevin Stefanski's handling of Shadur Sanders crossed from questionable into outright baffling very early. During training camp, Stefanski made the shocking decision not to give Sanders a single first-team rep, and that alone tells you everything about how mismanaged this situation really was. Think about how insane that is for a moment. You bring in a young quarterback with real talent, leadership traits, and a high football IQ. A quarterback who needs reps to learn the system, build timing with receivers, and adjust to NFL speed. And instead of developing him, you keep him isolated from the starters.
This precipitous drop-off happened on your watch. You knew what the situation was with him off the field when y'all acquired him and gave him $230 million guaranteed. And that's not Stefanski. Of course, that's ownership, Haslam, and we get that part. But again, I'm not talking about Deshaun Watson in terms of him not being great. I'm talking about him literally falling off. I mean, a disaster. That was on your watch.
Okay.
And then I look at Jacoby Brissett. Listen, he ain't great, but damn it, he ain't a scrub. I'm just looking at some of the stuff that you got and you're working with. That's on your watch. You the coach. So what I'm saying is, yeah, he could be a head coach again. He's a two-time coach of the year. I'm not here to question his coach. I'm not qualified to question his coaching acumen. I'm talking results.
Yeah.
And when you 8-26 over the last 2 years, and you got 13 quarterbacks over the last 6, and you can't seem to find anything offensively that works, when offense is supposed to be your background, that's a problem.
Okay, so
that's a problem.
That decision set the table for disaster. Because in the very next breath, Stefanski did the exact opposite of what development requires. He tossed Shadur Sanders into real game situations with zero meaningful preparation, expecting results without putting in the work to support him. That's not coaching. That's negligence. Sanders was essentially told to swim after being denied time in the pool. No chemistry, no rhythm, no safety net, just thrown into the fire and expected to survive. And here's the part that makes it impossible to ignore. Shadur Sanders still showed resilience. He still battled. He studied the playbook. He maximized every snap. He refused to fold even while operating inside a broken structure. Instead of collapsing, Sanders flashed poise, toughness, and raw ability. He proved he could compete at the highest level even when the odds were stacked against him. But just as momentum started to build, Stefanski once again found a way to step in and stall it. The game against the Tennessee Titans should have been a turning point. Instead, it became the most damning evidence of Stefanski's mismanagement. That night, Shadur Sanders was sensational. 4 touchdown passes. Calm in the pocket. Precision throws. Commanding the huddle like a veteran. He dragged the Cleveland Browns back into a game that looked dead and buried. The stadium felt it. The sideline felt it. The momentum had completely shifted. Sanders had the hot hand, the confidence, and the trust of his teammates. Everything pointed to letting the young quarterback finish the job. And then, Stefanski panicked. With the game on the line and one final drive needed to seal the win, Stefanski made a decision that stunned everyone watching. He pulled Shadur Sanders, the quarterback who had just thrown 4 touchdowns, and abruptly changed the offensive identity. Instead of trusting the quarterback who brought them back, Stefanski handed the ball to Isaiah Judkins and completely flipped the script. The result was catastrophic. The final drive fell apart, execution vanished, the rhythm was gone, and the Browns handed away a game they absolutely should have won.
You gonna go in the draft?
I can.
You got what? Projected, you got Dante Moore? Ty Simpson? Huh? Gunnar Stockton? Archibald? Huh? It ain't no strong quarterbacks that's making a case to be the number one guy. So Coach Stefanski knows that, hold on, I got to have grace with this. Do you understand what I'm saying? But while having grace, big dog, you're losing games. And tick, 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 tick. You're on the clock. And even though that's the ticking time of a clock, it can also be the ticking time of a bomb. So, be very mindful of the games that you play. I understand the tactic and I understand the protocol. But ladies and gentlemen, Coach Stefanski, that time is ticking for you to have to make a decision. Because even putting Bailey Zappi back at the number 2 position, what is that really saying? I can't believe what you're saying if I'm seeing what you're doing.
Let's be crystal clear. That loss was not on Shadur Sanders. It wasn't on the defense. It wasn't bad luck. It was a coaching decision that backfired in real time. And that moment wasn't an outlier. It was a pattern repeating itself. Beyond the on-field mistakes, there's growing concern about the environment Stefanski created behind the scenes. Multiple reports suggest a culture where players who questioned decisions or spoke up found themselves quietly punished. The most disturbing claims revolve around alleged misuse of injury designations. According to those reports, players were removed from games or even from the active roster under the label of injury, despite being healthy and ready to play. That's not just poor leadership. That's a breach of trust. Even more alarming are allegations involving Shadur Sanders himself. Reports indicate that Stefanski listed Sanders as injured not once, but twice, despite there being no legitimate injury preventing him from playing. If true, that crosses a line. Because injury reports aren't just internal tools, they're public disclosures that affect careers, reputations, and futures. When you stack all of this together, the lack of reps, the reckless game management, the silencing of players, and the questionable injury reporting, the picture becomes impossible to defend. This wasn't about development. This wasn't about patience. Both times, Shadur Sanders was officially listed as injured and unavailable to play. On paper, it looked routine, but people close to the situation have suggested those injury designations were anything but legitimate. According to those accounts, the injuries weren't the real reason Sanders was kept off the field. Instead, the designations appeared to be a convenient shield, a way for Kevin Stefanski to justify not playing a quarterback he either didn't trust or didn't want to admit he mishandled.
And I felt it throughout individuals who took a look at it. If it's a right guard, you can play through that. When it's a quarterback, you kind of need that muscle to throw. So unfortunately, going to put him down for a little bit here. We'll treat it day to day and see how he responds, but want to be smart because he's a thrower, so you can't.
And that's where the situation crosses from questionable into deeply troubling. Because injury reports aren't tools for roster manipulation. They're supposed to be honest disclosures built on trust between coaches, players, teams, and the league. One possible explanation is that Sanders simply didn't fit into whatever rigid offensive vision Stefanski had locked himself into. Another possibility is even more damning, that playing Sanders would have forced Stefanski to publicly acknowledge his earlier mistakes. Mistakes like refusing to give him first-team reps, delaying his development, and mismanaging his opportunities. Whatever the motivation, using injury labels to control playing time is unacceptable at any level of football. At the NFL level, it represents a serious breach of trust that players don't forget. When you step back and look at all the evidence together, the pattern becomes impossible to dismiss. This wasn't a one-off decision. This wasn't situational misfortune. This was repeated behavior. That's why Cam Newton's criticism didn't just sound emotional, it sounded accurate. His pushback against both Kevin Stefanski and Dan Orlovsky's defense of him landed, because it lined up with what fans and players had been watching unfold. Stefanski wasn't a coach trapped in bad circumstances. He wasn't unlucky. He wasn't a victim of instability. He was a coach who repeatedly failed at quarterback development. A coach who panicked when quarterbacks actually succeeded. And, according to reports, a coach who allegedly relied on dishonest tactics to maintain control and silence dissent. That is not the resume of a great coach waiting for redemption. That is the profile of someone who failed at the most basic responsibilities of the job. And then came the validation, from a voice few in sports media can ignore. When Stephen A. Smith weighed in, the conversation shifted dramatically. Smith didn't hedge. He didn't soften the message. He made it clear that firing Stefanski wasn't controversial, it was necessary. Smith pointed to the same unavoidable statistic that keeps coming up again and again.
Right decision. You said something that I thought was asinine. It's automatic that he's going to be a head coach in the league next season. No, it isn't. And I'm going to tell you why. 6 seasons in Cleveland, 13 quarterbacks. Somewhere along the way, do I not get to look at you as a head coach and say, could you find somebody? Could you find anybody? Anybody? I'll throw the names out for you. I got them right in front of me.
Okay.
Case Keenum, Nick Mullins, Deshaun Watson, Jacoby Brissett, Baker Mayfield, Joe Flacco, P.J. Walker, Dorian Thompson-Robinson, Jeff Driscoll, Jameis Winston, Bailey Zappi, Dylan Gabriel, Shadur Sanders. Okay, I get that it's a tough list. I understand that. But you're talking about 3 or 4 people in there that could help you look a little bit better than you looked. Excuse me. If you had kept Baker Mayfield, it might have happened. Hold on, wait a minute. You can say it's Kevin Stefanski. If you're telling me he has no say, if you're telling me a 2-time coach of the year is forced to be mute and have no impact whatsoever, I'm with you. But if he has a voice, then I got to look at him and say, well, damn it, how come these cats going in and out? I got to look at a Deshaun Watson. We know what you were in Houston. We understand the distractions off the field. We get that part. But my God, the fall from grace on the field, how'd that happen? It was on your watch, meaning you were coaching them. I mean, listen, I'm not holding anybody accountable more than Deshaun Watson. That's on him. But I'm saying along the way, you being the 2-time coach of the year.
Over 6 seasons, Stefanski had 13 different quarterbacks cycle through his system, and not one emerged as a legitimate franchise quarterback. That's not a coincidence. That's not a bad bounce. That's not just how football goes. That's proof. Smith emphasized that the sample size was massive. Coaches rarely get that many chances at the most important position in sports. When you fail every single time, the verdict becomes unavoidable. The modern NFL is driven by quarterbacks. A head coach who cannot evaluate, develop, or properly utilize quarterback talent is fighting a losing battle before the season even starts. Stefanski had more opportunities than most coaches ever receive, and he squandered every one of them. That's why the contrast between Orlovsky's defense and Newton's criticism resonated so deeply. It wasn't just about one coach. It was about accountability, about standards, about refusing to excuse failure just because it comes packaged with good press conferences and friendly media relationships. What Dan Orlovsky is really arguing, whether he realizes it or not, is that coaches should be judged almost exclusively on whiteboards and play designs. Scheme over substance, theory over results. In his view, if the system looks good on paper, then failures in player development can be brushed aside as bad luck or flawed personnel. But Cam Newton is speaking from a completely different reality. Not from a studio desk, but from lived experience inside NFL locker rooms. Newton's stance is simple and unforgiving. Coaches aren't hired just to draw plays. They're hired to develop players, create environments where talent can grow, and make decisions that actually help teams win games. That's the disconnect. When a coach repeatedly fails to develop quarterbacks, that alone is a problem. But when that same coach actively undermines those quarterbacks through lack of preparation, poor in-game judgment, and alleged manipulation of injury reports, the argument becomes overwhelming. At that point, it's no longer about philosophy. It's about accountability. Newton is absolutely right in saying that Kevin Stefanski wasn't just unlucky. He wasn't misunderstood. He wasn't a victim of circumstance. He was a coach who failed at the most important responsibility in modern football. Quarterbacks drive the NFL. Everything flows through them. If you can't evaluate them, prepare them, protect them, and trust them when they perform, then nothing else matters. And yet Kevin Stefanski went through 13 quarterbacks with the Cleveland Browns and came away with no sustained success. No long-term solution. No stability. That's not noise. That's the signal. Orlovsky's defense doesn't strengthen Stefanski's case. It exposes how detached parts of sports media have become from what actually happens inside NFL organizations. From the trust dynamics, from the consequences of bad leadership, from the reality players live with every single Sunday. Because inside locker rooms, players know when systems don't match words. They know when accountability only flows one way. And they know when coaches protect themselves instead of developing talent. That's why Newton's words hit harder. He's defending players. He's defending standards. He's defending the idea that leadership actually means something. The Stefanski era in Cleveland didn't end abruptly. It ended inevitably. The evidence piled up season after season. The quarterback carousel, the stalled development, the head-scratching decisions, the growing disconnect. 13 quarterbacks and no sustained success isn't a debate topic. It's a verdict. And no amount of scheme talk can erase that.